Emma. Welcome back to my channel. Today, this is going to be my 2023 December wrap-up. Yes, I'm filming this on January 12th. Yes, I'm probably going to be posting it even later than that. But in the true spirit of my channel, that's just how we do things here. So, I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in December of 2023. Which is last month, 2023. Probably one of my worst reading months that I had last year. I read 14 books, which is by no stretch a bad reading month at all. I read some good books, but I feel like I didn't read as much as normal. I mean, I left my job, I moved, Christmas, like all these things happened. So there were a lot of books that I really wanted to read, and I thought I would get a lot more reading done since I didn't have a job. I was just going to be moving and getting everything ready, but then moving. So, let's talk about the 14 books I read. Did I like them? Overall, I'm reflecting on the list. I read some pretty good books. Like, I enjoyed a lot of the books that I read, so while I didn't read as many books as normal, I feel like I read books that I enjoyed more. But let's get into it. So, the first book that I read in December was The Only Survivors by Megan Miranda. This is Megan Miranda's 2023 release. It is a, like, kind of locked box thriller. Two school buses crashed, like, 10 or so years ago on the senior trip, and there was 9 survivors, I think. And then after one of the survivors commits suicide, they decide to meet every single year to kind of like keep each other together. Cassidy, she's been trying to distance herself from the survivors. Then one of the people that she was closest to also turns out that he also is dead. So she decides to go back, kind of figure out what's going on, and then she is trying to figure out what's happening, and a lot of things are suspicious. People are vanishing. It's looking like everybody has secrets. Something is wrong. And it's told in past and present, so these 7 remaining people each get a POV on what happened 10 years ago, I think. Like, the surviving people's flashbacks to what happened, like, because it was this really tragic event. I mean, the vans crashed, and a lot of people died, never really recovered. So, it's this whole sort of thing. You're trying to figure out what actually happened years ago. And what's happening now, because it seems like somebody is targeting them, and they're trying to figure out why. And Cassidy is sort of going undercover and doing all this research. I did really enjoy this one. I don't think this is my favorite Megan Miranda, but it did keep me guessing. The final twist at the end was honestly insane. I will say I didn't really like any of the characters. I feel like I have a lot to say about this one. I think it's a really good summer thriller. It takes place, it's like May in the Outer Banks. I don't know where that is exactly. I think East Coast, but it's like they're on a beach and they go swimming. So I think this would be a really good like summer thriller. I probably read it in like a day or two. So really good summer thriller, really good beach read. I think it's just, if you're looking for a thriller, I think this is just a classic one. You really can't go that wrong with Megan Miranda. All of her books, again, are relatively solid. It just wasn't my favorite of hers that I've ever read. Then I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I think I talked about this in my 2020, or my 23 best books of 2023. This book was fascinating to me. In this book, we have Juniper, and Juniper watches her best friend die, and then subsequently immediately steals her manuscript. And from then on, we have Juniper, who is white, taking the manuscript of somebody who is Asian, and then kind of transforming herself and trying to sort of get this publicity off the back of, like, her dead friend's work. And it's just kind of her trying to protect this, and then slowly, as everything sort of unravels around her, she just becomes more and more unhinged, and it's like, what is she gonna do? How far is she willing to go to, like, save what she's worked for? This book was just such a brilliant and interesting concept. I think that the way it is written is just so fascinating. We see June just descend into absolute madness when she is just, what is she going to do? And we get to see June just kind of go crazy over the fact that she's trying to hold on to this success that wasn't even really hers to begin with. And just, I don't really know how to, like, accurately explain this book. Other than that, you should read it. It was so engaging, so interesting, so different from anything I'd ever read. I really, really, really liked it. So, and then I read To Heaven to Heist by Sarah Desai. I was really, really anticipating this book, and I am so sad that it flopped. This is a heist story about a woman who, her best friend gets convicted of stealing a, like, super expensive necklace, and she assembles a team to sort of, like, steal the necklace back and clear her friend's name. It's kind of like Ocean's 11, but it was just, this book was so unbelievably cringy for me. I think that, like, Sarah Desai tried so hard to make every single character quirky. Like, every single character has to have, like, a one-liner and a quip, and it's, like, it's just that over and over and over again. And I was getting such secondhand embarrassment from everything these characters said. I didn't find any of the characters charming. I did not like the romance. I did not like the main character. I just found this book really, really cringeworthy. And which was really disappointing because I was really excited to read it. The premise was really interesting. A romance, but we've got heist. And again, I mean, the plot was kind of fun. The setup is weird, but the idea was interesting enough, and there were a few twists towards the end that I was like, oh, that's kind of nice, but I just think the dialogue and the characters were really cringy for me, and I just really didn't end up enjoying this book, which is really disappointing. But anyways, then I read The Well of Ascension, which is the second book in the Mistborn original trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. I don't want to talk too much about the plot of this because it is the second book, but if you haven't read Mistborn, you really, really should. High fantasy, and we follow Vin, who is just like a girl on the street, and she gets plucked by Kelsier, him and his crew are trying to kill the Lord Ruler, who is the dictator of their world. And it's kind of like heist, murder, adventure. It's just really fascinating. So this book was the second book in the series. I did not like it as much as the first. It took me a really, really long time to read. It was really, really politic-y. Less of the sort of adventure of the first, which I didn't love as much. I'm really not into super political fantasies. I did still like it. I think that, again, Brandon Sanderson is just a fantastic writer, and I really have a lot of fun with his books. I'm currently working through the third one. I'm really excited to finish the series, but I don't know. It was a good book. It wasn't my favorite in the series. It did take me a really long time to read, but I think that the series is still 100% worth picking up. So, and the powers are so cool. They manipulate metals, and that's like the magic system. I don't know. Just this world has just kept building and building and building, and it's just so rich and interesting. And this book was a lot of information, which I always love. And then I'm going to talk about these two books next to each other because they're by the same author, but I read Triple Duty Bodyguards and Faking with Benefits, both by Lily Gold. These are both Why Choose romances, which I'd never read before. So Triple Duty Bodyguards is, we have a actress, Briar Saint, I believe her name is, and this man is stalking her, and she hires these 3 security guards, and they become her lovers. And it was fun. These books were just really, really fun. They were spicy. They were just, so we'll talk about Triple Duty Bodyguards first. I like this one a little bit more. This one had a little less character development. We really only see character development with Briar and one of the guys, Matt, I believe. But I found the plot to be way more engaging because it's a little bit more of like a mystery, a little bit more like thrilling. It is a lot shorter. Okay, I mean, both these books are really fucking long. But Duty Bodyguards, Briar, actress, she hires these 3 guys, and originally they're all sort of against it. I just this first one was really, really fun, and then I read the bonus epilogue where it's like they're all happy and they have their kids, and so that was really, really cute. Faking with Benefits was our main character, Layla. Layla has never had a boyfriend, and then she's got 3 neighbors that live across the hall from her, and all 3 of them run a what do they do? Oh, they have like a romantic, like a romance podcast where they talk about like dating and sex and like life tips about a relationships podcast. And so she's like, well, you guys know how to teach people how to be dateable, so like teach me how to be dateable. And we all know where this goes from here. This one was way longer, and I think it's because we get like development for every single character, whereas in the first book it was just our main girl Briar and then one of the dudes. In this book, each of the dudes and Layla herself go through a lot of character development, a lot of relationship development. So that was why it was so long, because instead of just a normal romance where it's 2 people, we're doing 4. So it's a lot of development, which is fine, but it was just really long. And then again, it wasn't as, I mean, not to say that either of these books are super believable, but it wasn't as believable. I will say I disliked the people in Faking with Benefits. One of the dudes lives across the hall is her old like teacher in high school. He's hung up on that for a really, really long time, and I just felt like it was a really unnecessary tidbit, but I guess it tied back into the plot later. I don't know. These books are just really fun. They are really long, kind of like Mariana Zapata long type of books. So if you're looking for a romance, especially Faking with Benefits, that has a lot of like character development and is spicy, I would recommend it. Again, I mean, they are just like fun. They're just good books. Like I enjoyed reading both of them. I enjoyed reading both of them. I don't know. I liked them. Yeah. So then I read The Foxhole Court by Nora Sakavic. I talked about this in my reading books I've been putting off. This is a like contemporary sports book about a guy named Neil who's running from his crime lord murderer father and joins an XC team, which is just like lacrosse with field hockey, I think. It's a fake sport. And this book is essentially just, he joins this XC team that is for people who needed second chances. Like, they have past trauma, they're dealing with addiction, they're dealing with other sorts of issues, and he joins this team, and it's just the kind of the dynamics of the team. And this book kind of ended on a cliffhanger, so I really wanted to go straight into the next one. I haven't read it yet, unfortunately, but this was just like a funny little book. It is very outdated. I definitely found myself reading it and I was like, oh yeah, that was a little bit, I mean, it wasn't cool in 2013 and it's definitely not cool now, but it was just funny. It was just really just a funny concept, and I found myself kind of enjoying the absurdity of it all, just how silly it is and how just weird all these characters are, and just how strange the idea of this book is. I just had a chuckle while I was reading this. And so if you're looking for something just weird to just, and it was fairly short, so it was a pretty easy read. It's like short chapters and everything, but I don't know, this was just a fun little book. I don't regret reading it. I definitely will continue with the series. And characters' interactions with each other were just all so funny because they're all blown so out of proportion. And so you're reading it and you're like, why are they doing this? I don't know. I had a good time reading it. And then I read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is another one of my best books of 2023. I cried like a little bitch reading this book, but this is a sort of historical fantasy. A woman named Addie LaRue who essentially is cursed to live forever but never be remembered by anybody that she ever meets. And then one day she meets somebody that remembers her. And it's a love story, but it's also a story about Addie growing and just all these beautiful things that she's witnessed and the way that she has tried to be remembered by other people. So heart-wrenching. Such a beautiful story. The writing, the second I finished this book, it jumped straight to the top of my list of best books that I've ever read. It is really long, but the way it's structured, we have Addie living in the present and meeting this person that remembers her, and then sort of talking, and then we kind of flash forward to her life leading up to this moment. So, and I think that the way E.E. Schwab organized these sort of sections of this book was just so beautiful and so fascinating to read. And I think everybody should read this book. I think this is one of the best books that I've ever read. So if you haven't read this book, please read it. It was just so beautiful, so heart-wrenching, and just like, keep some tissues on hand, because I cried a lot when I read this book. And then I read a wild book, which was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. This was Lisa Jewell's 2023 thriller release, and it was absolutely bonkers. So we have a woman named Alex who runs a podcast, and in this podcast she was interviewing interesting women that had done a lot for their communities, done a lot for the world, and at her birthday party she runs into a woman who is also celebrating her birthday. They're birthday twins. This woman, Josie, has completely opposite life from Alex. Alex has rich, caring husband. She has 2 like beautiful children, and she sort of kind of takes pity on Josie and is like, you know what, Josie, you've had a interesting life. I will interview you for my podcast, and we'll kind of like talk about your life, because Josie's like, I'm on the cusp of something great, so wouldn't it be great to interview me when I'm on the cusp of something great, and then you can sort of see my story before and then see where I'm at after. And Alex is like, sure, why not? So they do that for a little bit, and then suddenly Josie is gone, and left behind is a whole mess, and Alex has to unravel everything. What was Josie telling her? What was true? What is false? And solving the mystery of like what she left behind and how can Alex recover from that. It was so unsettlingly creepy in a good way. I think Lisa Jewell does a really good job of writing books that just get under your skin and make you feel like uneasy almost. And I also think Lisa Jewell does a really good job of making the woman the villain in horror and like in thriller mystery novels, because I feel like so often it is the man that is doing the violence. So it's just interesting and refreshing to read a book where the woman is the villain. And so this book just got under my skin. It was so engaging. I had to know what was happening. And it's sort of told in like a mixed media format, where we have the actual chapters and then we have transcripts from Alex's podcast. And then when you sort of start the book, you see that they are making a Netflix series based on Alex's podcast. And so we also have bits of the Netflix series, sort of like a true crime, like what would Netflix make as a true crime series, sort of sprinkled in like transcripts from interviews from that. So I think that format was great. I think the concept was unlike anything I'd ever read. I was guessing up until the very end. I could not believe what I was reading. So crazy. So unbelievable. And just made me so uncomfortable to read, because Lisa Jewell, again, such a good job of just writing books that make you uneasy and just unsure and just icky, but so good. I really liked this one. And then I read Check and Mate and Vampires of El Norte. Both of these I talked about in my anticipated 2023 releases video, so I'm not going to go into them too much. But Check and Mate was Ali Hazelwood's YA debut, a chess story about Mallory and Nolan Sawyer. And they are sort of rivals on the chess team. Mallory doesn't play chess anymore, but then she accidentally beats Nolan one day, and they sort of become rivals. And it was just a really sweet, endearing story. I enjoy Ali Hazelwood's writing. I think this was just another really cute winner from her, and definitely a feel-good romance if you're looking for something in that vein. And I enjoyed the chess in it too. And then Vampires of El Norte honestly should have been on my best books of 2023. Probably was like number 24, 25, but this is a amazing horror novel from Isabel Cañas, which is about Nina and Nestor, who, when they were children, were ripped apart and are brought back together to fight America as America is invading, and this is during the Mexican-American War. Like, the ranches around the northern Mexico are kind of like preparing armies of their own, staff and like capable cowboys and everything, and then Nestor joins as a cowboy, Nina joins as a healer, and it's just their story. Such a tender romance, but then also such a fantastic thriller. And again, Isabel does such a great job of writing horror in a way that is just, she just creates such an atmosphere, and I just really love this book. I think the writing was beautiful, the writing style is beautiful, the character development was beautiful, seeing Nina grow as a character was amazing, seeing their love grow, and then just, again, reading the horror aspects of this book were so good, because it's not outright horror, but I mean, it is outright horror, but it's not, there's so much anticipation and build up to the actual horror that it is just so good. Highly recommend both these books. In between those, I read Welcome to the Underworld by Contemplate. This was another book that I read for finishing, or reading books that I've been putting off. Very disappointing read. This is a romance mafia story that honestly reads like a 2004 fanfiction. About a woman who resembles the dead queen of the underworld who died 3 years prior, exactly the time that Yori woke up with amnesia. And then Yori just gets drawn back into this world of crime. But, I mean, there wasn't really a plot. It's just kind of her walking around trying to figure out what's going on. The romance was interesting. I mean, the setup for the romance is that he essentially blackmails her into becoming his personal assistant, which is weird. And I don't know, for having this book on my TBR for so long, finally reading it was vaguely disappointing. But if you want more of my thoughts on it, you can watch my video on it. But then I read The Final Gambit, which is the third book in the Inheritance Games trilogy, the original trilogy. I don't know if I'll continue on to the Hawthorne brothers sort of bit of that. Let me know if I should. Final Gambit. This is the final book in that sort of contained series that focuses on Avery, and I actually really liked this one. I think that the other two didn't appeal to me as much because there weren't really any stakes, if that makes sense. Avery was... God, what even happened in this book? I read this book like at midnight because I just was like, I should need something to read. Why don't I read this book? I wanted to finish before the end of the year, and then suddenly I was like probably 15-20% through. I was like, yeah, I'll just read a little bit before I go to bed. I ended up finishing it that night because I couldn't put it down. But I'm trying to remember. So I think this one was just more fascinating to me because the stakes felt higher. In the first two books, we kind of see Avery just solving puzzles that Tobias Hawthorne left for her. She's hanging out with the brother. She's got the love triangle thing going on. She's trying to figure out why she was selected. But this one kind of raised the stakes, and it felt a little bit more intense. It felt like a little bit more of an actual plot with an actual story, and so because of that, I just feel like I loved it more. I don't really like the way Jennifer Lynn Barnes writes her love triangles. I don't really care for them. But I don't know, I just felt like this story was a little bit more thrilling and mystery than the first two, and that was why it engaged me more. Overall, I do think this series is worth picking up, especially if you really like puzzles and rich people drama. Yeah. And then the last book that I read in 2023 was The Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Leese. This is just a cute little, almost Christmassy novella. Chloe Leese is the writer of the Bergen Brothers series and then the Wilmot Sisters series. It's a cute little, like, grumpy sunshine, kind of like Rivals to Lovers romance. We have two characters that work in a bookstore. Jonathan Frost and Gabrielle Dean Natale. So they work in the same bookstore, but Jonathan is very just like to the T. He wants to organize things, and Gabriella is very like fun and just wants to do decorations and events. And Jonathan's like, no, you gotta do the inventory. So they're just two very opposing people, and then the bookstore's doing very well. So we sort of see them strike up a deal to whoever sells the most books gets to keep their job and the other has to leave. And then through the course of them sort of sparking this rivalry, we see them sort of fall in love, and this was a really cute, fun story. I read this over Christmas Eve and Christmas, which was just nice. It just really helped me get into the vibe, helped me get into the energy. I just thought it was adorable. I thought it was so cute. It's just an easy Christmas rom-com, nothing too complicated. The plot was pretty easily guessable, but they do get points for no third act breakup and for actually communicating. So I really, really loved that. I just think this was a really cute, fun Christmas rom-com, and it was a really great way to end off the year. I wish I had read a few more books. I had a really, really ambitious TBR for December, but I'm so happy that I read this one because it just got me in the mood for Christmassy stuff, and just was kind of nice to read while I was being cozy and spending time with my family and watching Christmas movies. So yeah, I would recommend it next year for if you want a little Christmassy rom-com, or if it's snowing where you are and you want a little Christmas magic to continue into January. So yeah, those are the 14 books that I read in December of 2023. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Emma. Stay tuned for more videos from me.